I want to welcome you all to today's training, and it promised to be a quite comprehensive and informative training, and we have one of us. Please, if you're logging in, try to mute your mic, please. We have one of us in person of Dr. Erastus Mak-Mensah that will be taking us through this training today. I want to encourage us all to pay enough attention and also ask questions when needed, when the time comes. Dr. Erastus is a pro in this field, and I know he's going to do a good job today. So I have an high expectation of learning a lot from him. And I know a lot of us here today to have a lot of expectation of learning from him. On this note, because of the limited time we have, I will be inviting him to give us a tips of what he has for us today. Thank you very much for joining, while I invite Dr. Erastus to take over. Okay, Dr. Erastus, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. I go by the name Erastus Mak-Mensah, and it's a privilege and honor to be here to guide you guys through the conducting of a meta-analysis. So without further ado, we jump into it. So a meta-analysis is the type of systematic review which talks about the synthesis of the results from individual studies to estimate statistical interest. It's also a quantitative approach for systematically combining results of previous research to arrive at conclusions about the body of a research. And in this, we mostly use quantitative data, that is numbers, and in arriving at a result. So according to one researcher, Glass, the combination of data or results from a collection of studies which addresses a common scientific problem, to him is a meta-analysis. And meta can also be termed as, or can also mean after or beyond. So in a meta-analysis, we deal with estimates. So what are we estimating? We are trying to estimate a statistic for a specific population, such as a treatment effect, risk of a compilation, the sensitivity and specificity of a diagnostic test, a correlation between two continuous variables. So a meta-analysis is a type of review which includes which actors come together to conduct, and is based on a protocol which summarizes, as I said earlier on, the statistical techniques. Compared to the traditional review, the results or the summary is mainly about the statistical analysis that is done. So what are some of the similarities of the study characteristics? In gathering the data for the meta-analysis, you need to have, all the studies need to have a same population. That means if there are several published studies investigating the same population, then incorporating all of these studies will increase the sample size, the amount of evidence, and have an advantage of demonstrating reproducibility of the experiments. Also, we'll talk about the benefits of a meta-analysis. The first one is it increases precision. That is less uncertainty around the estimated outcome, and it also gives extra power to reject a hypothesis if it is in fact a false hypothesis. It also estimates heterogeneity, that is variation in true effects of the treatments or the studies that are being analyzed. So what are some of the data or the data that will be used in the meta-analysis? Generally, the mean, standard deviation, and standard errors are used. And the mean is just the sum or the average of the sample values divided by the sample size. The standard deviation describes the variation in the population, and the effect estimate, that is the mean difference, is the difference in the mean values of the intervention and control arms of the study. The standard error, as we all know, describe the uncertainty of or in the estimates of the mean and the mean differences. So in meta-analysis, we have something called fixed and random effects of meta-analysis. And a fixed effect meta-analysis assumes that there is one true intervention effect. That is, variations between studies is purely due to chance, while the random effect meta-analysis does not assume that there is one true effect. So when do we conduct a meta-analysis? Meta-analysis is a statistical technique used to answer a specific question in a protocol of a systematic review. So if the question is relevant, the inclusion criteria are relevant, and the meta-analysis is planned to estimate that statistic and then conduct the meta-analysis. The presence of statistical heterogeneity is not a reason to abandon a meta-analysis. It affects how you interpret the results and the conclusions you draw. What are some of the limitations of meta-analysis? Some of the limitations include if the studies that are included in the meta-analysis are of poor quality, the summary results will also be poor. The uncertainty associated with the potential bias in the included studies will not be captured in the confidence interval of the summary effect. And also, the values of the meta-analysis depends on the identification of the relevant studies from the systematic review. So before you start to conduct a meta-analysis, you need to think first. And what you need to do is find out if the included studies are similar with respect to treatment effects. And you also need to look at the study design, if they are similar, the subjects, the treatments, and all that, if they are similar. Then secondly, you need to determine which protocol you want to use. That will help you find the sources of heterogeneity that will be used in the meta-analysis. And after that, you need to do a Q statistics to check for the hypothesis that the true population treatment is equal to in all the studies. So in conducting a meta-analysis, there are about 9 steps. The first one is you have to frame a question based on a theory. Then you run a search. The search can be from online, mostly online, in various databases like PubMed, Med9, Google Scholar, Scopus, and you can also read abstracts from meetings, conference, and you also read like you check clinical trials and all that, depending on the field that you are in. Then after that, you read the title and abstracts of all the individual papers that you have downloaded from all these online databases. Then the fourth step is you extract the information from the selected set of final articles. So in selecting that, there are some criteria that you need to follow. First of all, you need to look at the year of publication. You try as much as you can to make sure that the year shouldn't be more than 10 years so that it will be a relevant study close to the current which year you are. Then also, you need to look at the type of publication, whether it's peer-reviewed or not. And also you need to look at the study design. Which design was used in that study, the language of publication, and mostly English papers are preferred, the socio-demographic environment, and you also need to look at that. So in processing the data, we have something we call the Prisma flow diagram. This is what is mainly used to process the data. So it has 4 steps. When you see on the left side, you find identification, screening, eligibility, and then the final one is included. So the first stage is identification. So this is where you search for the records on the databases. So the number of records you have been able to download in terms of the question you have raised, you need to state the number, you need to report the number, and maybe you have some other records from additional sources, you need to also state that. Then after that, you need to look for duplicates in the search, in the documents that you have downloaded. Then remove those duplicates, Then after that, you need to screen the records depending or with your criteria in mind, like the criteria that you are using to choose the papers. You need to do that. Then after that, you now have the inclusive and the exclusive method. So coding of the studies for their quality usually requires only simple judgment of the presence or the absence of desirable design features, such as randomized experiments blind to hypothesis or controlled demand characteristics. The quality points can then be assigned on the basis of the number of desirable features present. Then also the rating of the studies usually requires a more global overall assessment of the methodological quality of the study using, for example, a 7-point rating scale. It's often called the Ottawa scale. Yeah, that is what is used in rating it. Then the reliability of coding or the rating should also be reported. So the 5th step is to determine the quality of the information in these articles. And this can be done with GradePro. It's a software that some people use to determine the internal validity of the various studies that are used. And also after that, you need to determine the extent to which these articles are heterogeneous. And in that doing, you have to use the coherence Q and the I-squared tests. Then you analyze and present your results. Estimate the summary effect size in the form of odds ratio and using both fixed or random methods. So in terms of using the coherent Q statistics to determine the extent of the article's heterogeneity, you'll be looking at the p-values of the effect sizes. Then the I-squared describes the percentage of variation across studies, and that is due to heterogeneity rather than chance. So if the I-squared is greater or equal to 50, we use the random effects model, or you use the random effects model in your analysis. But if the I-squared is less than 50, then you use the fixed effect model in the analysis. So after that, you now determine the extent to which these articles have publication bias, and in doing that, you need to run a funnel plot. So when we talk about publication bias, it's basically selecting publications that show positive effects or positive treatment of effects and statistical significance. So the final step will be to conduct a subgroup analysis and meta-regression to test if the subsets of research that capture the summary effects are true. So in conducting the meta-analysis, there are some software that people use to do that. And I think in order to choose which one you have to use, you have to look at which of the softwares you already know and see if you can use it or not. And generally, these are some of the softwares that people use. Some use SAS. There are macros that they can download and use it in SAS, SPSS, or Starter. And some people to use the commercial comprehensive meta-analysis, which is not for free. You need to pay for that. Then some people to use the Coherence collaborative software, which is called the RevMan. And Mix can also be used. Mix is an add-in that you can download and add to Excel and use for the analysis. MetaSem, MetaDix are also softwares that you can use. For me, I use RevMan in doing the analysis. Then I also use ArcGIS Pro for my maps, and I use Excel for my forest plots, and sometimes I use Sigma plot for my mean, standard deviation, and standard errors. So this is an example, or this is how a forest plot looks like. This is how you show your results. Some of those softwares I mentioned earlier on can give you something like this, but for me, I prefer to draw it myself, so I use Excel to do that. So you have the mean difference, the line of no effect, which you can all see here. Oh, sorry. And also, this is the pooled results or the pooled effect of all the studies that has been analyzed. So from the line of no effect, those on the left side favors the intervention, and those on the right side favors the control. So from the line of no effect, so in terms of looking for the heterogeneity, the forest plot on the left shows the low statistical heterogeneity. It means most of the studies, the weights of the studies are almost together. But when you look at the one with the high statistical heterogeneity, you realize that the weights are far apart, which means there's more difference between all the studies. So in conclusion, most reviews of the literature should be quantitative, just as most primary research should be quantitative. The statistical procedures used in the meta-analysis range from the basic to the very complex, as do the statistical procedure of the primary research. And in presenting the results and writing a paper or the report, there is no one way to do a meta-analysis or to report a meta-analysis, any more than there is to report the data analysis as a primary research. So just as the way you write when you do a primary research and you write your report or you write your manuscripts, it's the same with the meta-analysis too. So now we look at how the meta-analysis is structured. First of all, we have the title. The title should be accurate or should accurately reflect the topic under review. Typically, the words meta-analysis should be attached to the title or should be part of the title. And the abstract usually has structure of an abstract with a short paragraph devoted to each of the following: the background, the methods, the results, and the conclusion, which is the same as we do in the normal or like when we do primary research. So the introduction will summarize the topic and explains why the meta-analysis was conducted. And this will be trying to solve or to kind of, there might be gaps in knowledge which you are trying to fill. So you need to state that. And you need to also state the purpose or the aim of the review or the meta-analysis. In the meta section, this is very important, and it should be explained clearly and logically. And it should include the inclusion and exclusion criteria, the identification of the studies, how do you identify the studies, the study selection, the data extraction, the quality assessment, and also the data analysis. The results should also be explained logically. You can begin by describing the search results and then move on to the study range and characteristics, study quality, and the effect of the intervention on the outcome. The discussion should also summarize the main findings from the review, and you need to back them by evidence. That is, you back them by what other people have already done. Finally, the strengths and weaknesses of the review should be discussed and implications for current practice suggested. And in the references, you are supposed to add every single paper you have included in the study. You can consider using a reference manager or a reference software to tackle the references. So before you submit to the journal, you need to, this is a checklist from Prisma that you can use to check whether all those requirements are in your manuscripts. The first one is the title. So on the right side, you see report on page, where the title can be found in your manuscript. If it is page 1, you write 1 there. And the summary, where can it be found? The summary is basically the abstract. So you write the page number there. This will help you check the various types of sections that you are supposed to be included in your meta-analysis, whether you already have them or not. If you don't have it, you go back and you fix it before you submit the journal. This part talks about the results and the discussions and funding. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Erastus, for that brief and comprehensive introduction. And I know a lot of persons may have 1 or 2 questions about what you've presented to us so far. So please, if there is anyone that have any question about the presentation done by Dr. Erastus, please, you can open your mic and ask your question, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for that, Dr. Erastus, for that wonderful presentation. So actually, I want to actually ask a question concerning, I don't know, actually I joined it, but I want to ask a question on the risk of bias, how to actually determine the risk of bias of any studies. So maybe you can actually buttress on that. Maybe they have been mentioned before I actually joined. Sorry for that. So, but I think I need more explanation on how to determine the risk of bias for studies, because I can see from that Prisma list that we have portion to feed the risk of bias. How do we determine risk of bias? Maybe you can just use maybe a few examples to actually denote that. Thank you.
Please, can I go ahead with my question, please?
Okay, please, I think let him address the first question, then move on to the next question.
No, you can add it. You can add it.
Okay.
Oh,
You said you can add.
okay. Thank you, Dr. Erastus, for the wonderful presentation you just made us to understand. Thank you very, very much. However, I have questions. The first one, I think you have explained it because I wanted to ask that what is the relationship between SPSS and meta-analysis? I think you have solved that. You have made us to understand that SPSS software can actually perform meta-analysis, and I got that one. Then I wanted to ask, does meta-analysis have software to be downloaded for use? I think you said so far the SPSS can provide solution to that. I think you have already done justice to that. Then what's the next one that I want to ask is that I would like, if you can make this material available, or other materials that we can study further, you understand? Then at the same time, this meta-analysis, can it be used for all the experiments, or is for certain experiments? So that's the main question I want to ask now. Can it be used for all experiments, for all studies, or is for certain group of experiments? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Okay, over to you, Dr. Erastus.
Let's add about 2 more.
Okay. So, there are some questions also in the chat box. You can read through them. There are about 2 questions. One, how can you use advanced search in Web of Science to get the articles from the database? What software do you use to extract such data? Okay, Dr. Charles.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Erastus, for this, to me, innovative approach to review. Honestly, I am happy to be part of this lecture. And my problem is that I would like to know more about this meta-analysis, maybe how to conduct this, maybe. I don't know if there is a way or an avenue to teach us how to do this, because someone like myself, I don't know anything about this meta-analysis. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Erastus.
Okay, so let me start with the softwares. For the softwares, as I said, there are different softwares that can be used, and it basically depends on the convenience of the person who is conducting the meta-analysis. And also, for me, I think if you know some of the softwares already, it would be good to find out if you can use it to conduct it or not before you start looking for the ones you cannot use. So yeah. So as I said, SPSS on its own, the one we normally download, cannot conduct a meta-analysis. But there are macros, or there are macros that you can download that when you install it, you will be able to use those macros in SPSS to conduct the meta-analysis. So let me make it clear, SPSS on its own cannot conduct the meta-analysis. That is one. Some people also use, in addition to this other software, some people also use RStudio. So if you know how to use RStudio, you can also be able to conduct the meta-analysis with the RStudio. So that's it about the softwares. For the publication bias, yeah, as I said earlier on, it is basically about selecting only articles with positive results. So if you want to avoid that, you need to try and blend. You don't need to select only articles that have positive results. But in addition to that, you have to, you can test for that using a funnel plot. So you can use a funnel plot to be able to determine the publication bias of the papers that you are using in your analysis. So somebody also asked whether the meta-analysis can be used in all experiments. Meta-analysis is basically like a secondary form of analysis where you use quantitative data from already published experiments. You collate them. It's like a pool of all those studies that have already been published. Then you now use it to analyze. So any sector you find yourself, you can conduct a meta-analysis in that sector. Whether you find yourself in the agri sector, in the social sciences, in nursing, clinicals, or whatever, whichever sector you find yourself, you can be able to use, or you can be able to conduct a meta-analysis. But the issue is that the procedure or the process in all these various sectors are different. The way an agri person will perform a meta-analysis is different from somebody in the health sector who conduct a meta-analysis, though the procedure will be similar, but there are some differences as to the values you'll be looking for or the values you'll be extracting from the various publications or the various articles that you'll be using in analysis. The values you have to use, they'll be different. It won't be the same, but the procedure is similar, though not the same. Yeah, so in any field you find yourself, you can be able to conduct a meta-analysis. And the last person was asking whether there's an avenue to teach the meta-analysis. If you're interested in going further or trying to, or maybe you want to have a hands-on practice, like, because it takes time, it's very time involving and it needs time. So you can contact the organizers of the program, then they'll sort you out. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Erastus, for that wonderful explanation. The floor is still open for questions. If you have any more questions. And also, a QR code has been sent to the group. You can scan this QR code to join the WeChat group where further information will be shared subsequently. Any more questions, please?
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks so much for the wonderful presentation. During the course of the presentation, sir, you said if someone wants to use meta-analysis, the person needs to find recent publications, not more than 10 years. How will someone goes about that to look for such publications? Hello?
Okay. Yes. Okay, let me
hello, please. Can I say something, please? I think Dr. Erastus did not probably mention, did not address that. I asked that how can we have access to this material so that we can study further on it?
Yeah, we've posted information about that on the group. You can send in your email, also join the WeChat group. I've sent a QR code, the chat group for that. You can send your email, also join the WeChat group for further information on the material. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, so the gentleman asked about how to search for the data. So it all starts with the question that you have raised, or it starts with what you are looking for, okay? So when you know what you are, like when you have your hypothesis, then you take some keywords from the hypothesis, and you search for those words. So those ones will help you get the papers that you need. And as I said earlier on, there are so many avenues that you can search for those papers, whether it's on Scopus, Web of Science, PubMed, like any of those, ISI, Web of Science, any of those online databases, you get all those papers that are related to the question that you have said. So after doing that, then you will now come to the coding. You will now decide, okay, maybe these are the things I'm looking for in this particular paper. So you now code your data before you do the extraction. So that will help you to determine. And it's when I said you should try to limit yourself to at least maybe 10 years, the range of, you get papers in the range of 10 years. It's the same with writing a normal review paper. When you write or when you get papers that are older than 10 years, some reviewers tend to question your relevance to what is going on in the present day. So that was why I said you should try to search for papers in like at least in a 10-year span from where we are now.
Your best people up and down.
Okay, Dr. Erastus, someone's asking another question that you didn't mention anything about extracting data from figures. How do you do that? Like a question from Dr. Gibson.
From figures, you need a software. One software called Get Data Digitizer. That is a software that is used to extract data from figures. Get Data Digitizer. So you have to download that software. It has the free version and it has the paid version. So whichever one you want, you use it.
Okay, Dr. Erastus, it would be helpful if you can send a link probably to the group, so that for those.
Okay, no problem. All right, any other question? I hope I've answered all the questions being asked.
I want to download, can you get the right version?
Hello.
Okay. Sorry, I had the network. Do you understand my question?
No, I didn't hear you.
My suggestion. I mean, the link for this.
Hello. Hola. Can you hear me? Erastus, can you hear me?
Hola is off.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you very much for the section, and thank you all for joining us. And those of you who are interested in the further training, it's not just one of those talk shops. We are taking it further. We want to come out with a project, and so we've created a group that those of us who are part of OAAD, please scan the QR code and join us, or look on the platform, our WeChat platform, and scan the code and join us, and we can take it further from there. Thank you very much for joining us. And those of you who are interested, don't forget, who may not be part of the project, don't forget to leave your email address with us, and we'll share further information with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Okay.
Vicky,
Hello.
please. Yes.
Okay. Dr. Erastus, thank you so much for the presentation. Actually, I think I've seen some questions here on the chat room. I don't know if it has been addressed already. How can you use the advanced search in Web of Science to get the articles from the database? That's a question from Ben. Can you access the chat room, please?
No, I can access the chat room. Let me see.
Okay, let me read out the question.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, the first one. Yeah, the first one says, how can you use the advanced search in Web of Science to get the articles from the database? That's from Ben.
Yeah, for Web of Science, I don't normally worry myself to go into details with that. I just search, normal searching. You just type the keywords that you are looking for. Let's say, for instance, you are looking for mulching. As I'm doing a grade, I'll just type the mulching there. Then whichever papers that come, I read the title. If they are relevant to what I'm looking for, then I download it. I don't try to go into it so deep because I have other places too I can search for information. So I don't normally try to waste my time so much on that. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Then another question says, did Dr. Erastus mention anything about extracting data from figures? That's from Gibson.
Yeah, so as I said, for the figures, you have to use a software, and the software is Get Data Digitizer. So as Ola was saying, I'll have to send maybe the link to that software so that those of you interested can download and use that software to extract data from the figures. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Erastus. I'm sorry, I had a network issue. Okay, is there any other participants with any questions?
In the chat room. The question.
There are some questions in the chat room. I can't see some now because I just rejoined, so I can't see some of the questions.
Can I help with that? I think he has addressed all those questions in the chat room.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Erastus, for your time. It's really, really a great moment with you. I know a lot of us have learned a lot of things. And for those that have sent their email, the PPT and other information will be sent to the email. And also, we're encouraging you to join the WeChat group so that more information can be posted or can be communicated to us through the WeChat group. As suggested, it would be nice if we can have a photo session for this training. So please, let's try to turn on our video while we have a photo session before concluding today's seminar. Let's try to turn on our video. Okay, Dr. Kosho, you're going to be helping us with the photo, right? Please let us know when you're done, Dr. Kojo.
Okay.
For the picture.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you very much. So we'll see you, those of you who are interested on the hands-on training and the dedicated group we just created. Thank you.
Okay, for those that don't join, if you can't see the QR code, you can just send your email